All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Walkoff. Today we are, of course, we're now joined again with Justin, and we always have Anthony here. So we got a big crowd. It's our first off-season episode. It's kind of uh bittersweet. We had a great season, but it's all over now. So now we got off-season news for you, and we're bringing it. Or we have all of it ready for you. No awards has been announced yet, although Rookie of the Year is announced at 6 tonight, so we are just missing it by a little bit. But we'll be able to talk about who won the Rookie of the Year uh, on our next episode and get to talk a little bit about each player today. But first, Justin, how are we doing?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
Doing very well. And of course, Anthony, how are we doing up there?
Can't complain, My Jets had a rough loss last night, but I'm glad to get my mind off of it with some baseball. So I get more depressed about the Mets, but that's okay.
That's all right. That's all right. So let's just jump right in. First of all, a little bit with the Mets, but more with the Cubbies. Craig Counsell is now their manager, and I think we talked a little bit about it. It's a little weird that Craig Counsell is a Cub now because they had to fire David Ross to get him. But this isn't the first time it's happened before. Actually, when Joe Madden was hired all the way back in 2016, they had a stable manager in 2015 who did a good job, but got fired for Joe Madden. So now uh, it happens again. And David Ross didn't do a bad job last year. It just seems like the Seiya Suzuki ball that just went straight through his glove. Kind of messed up the season for him, but that's not really David Ross's fault. He managed a good team for the entire year, and it looked like they were going to be locked into a playoff spot for sure. Um, and then it doesn't happen as they wanted it to. And now Craig Counsell from the Milwaukee Brewers is their manager. I don't know. I kind of look at it as a betrayal. I know all of Brewers fans can agree with me on this one, and I wouldn't be surprised if some Cubs fans agree too.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of surprising how like the Brewers brass kind of, I think it was in like a phone call with the media or something, kind of this council, like they didn't really wish him well at all. They were just kind of like, yeah, we really don't like what he did. And like the only thing they really did was put out like a tweet or something of like, "Oh, thank you, Craig," like very generic. Like you could tell the organization was upset, and for a good reason. I mean, he did stiff them, and I I don't know. To me, I think he was, I guess, sick with the organization, and maybe he wanted to work with Stearns. Only wanted to work with Stearns in Milwaukee, and wasn't going to come to New York. So I don't know. I really don't think it's going to have that much of a difference for the Cubs. The Cubs are still in rebuild mode. They still have a lot of work to do. And yeah, getting a professional manager there helps. But David Ross, there was nothing wrong with him. He wasn't terrible. So I don't know. I think there was I think the Cubs really just wanted this splash managerial hire, and it really didn't need to happen.
Well, and like again, like with the Cubs and David Ross, like they were fighting for a playoff spot. Like they were playing meaningful baseball in the month of September. So it's not like David Ross did a bad job and like it was an easy decision for the Cubs to let him go. But back to your point about like looking at the Brewers and they're saying goodbye to Council. Like, yeah, it was just a little generic tweet saying thank you. And he was a former player, Council, and I think he spent time with the Brewers as well during his career, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but yeah, like given that he was a former player for that franchise and basically leading the team for years to come as being the manager, just by having that tweet alone is it really does show that, to your point, like it kind of is betrayal for just walking out on them, not even giving the Brewers a chance to even offer him, a chance to come back. So Council really just left on his own terms, and yeah, I mean that's all I really got to say about that.
Yeah, it's definitely something to look into more into the season, because it brings in the rivalry that the Cubs and the Brewers have. And now the Cubs are, I think the one thing to remember is the Cubs had a good season last year, but two of their biggest parts are free agents now. Cody Bellinger and um, Marcus Stroman, both free agents. So you could possibly be losing a huge starter for your team and probably one of the most impressive bats that we saw this season in all of baseball. One of the big jump back most improved bats for sure. They are potentially losing that. The Brewers are saying that they are ready for a fire sale over there. So, I mean, this would have been really cool if it was like 2, 3 years ago when these teams were still in prime position to win, and now they're not as much, especially with all the Corbin Burns drama. You probably won't see him in a Brewers jersey next year. But I mean, it's still interesting, and I don't think either of these teams saw it coming. And I'm honestly surprised it still happened. But to look around the league a little bit more, Ron Washington, former manager of the Texas Rangers, and then third base coach for the Braves, just got hired by the Angels to manage the team. I like this hire. We've seen a lot of managers come and go already this offseason. We haven't seen much players yet, but Ron Washington is, and I don't want to sound mean about this, he just sounds like another victim to the Angels' destruction of their own team. There's no way Ohtani's coming back, and Ron Washington is going to have to deal with injuries and players being streaky and the team never being on the same page. This seems like an impossible task that is just going to lead him to get fired.
Yeah, I give him respect for going to an organization that has as much trouble as the Angels do. I mean, I assume he had other offers to interview and stuff, but if I were him, I'd lean to maybe like more of an Astros type team, because Ron Washington's been a baseball lifer. I mean, he's been in part of baseball for his whole life. He was a manager for years, obviously with Texas. But yeah, I don't know. It's a really surprised me. I think it surprised everybody, because I didn't know who the Angels were going to get as their manager, but I honestly thought it was probably going to be either a first timer or a younger guy. I didn't think it was going to be someone of Ron Washington's age. I feel like Ron wants to win now, and yeah, I don't know. I'm glad to see Ron get another chance though, because he obviously the Texas Rangers with them, and they blew the World Series and all that, but he had success. And he's one of those baseball lifers. And yeah, he's had his personal issues up, but he's had a long stretch now where he's just been a good guy, good coach. So I don't know, I'm happy for him. I don't think they're gonna have much success, but you never know. You could turn it around. We saw it with 2 teams in the World Series this season, turned it around really quickly. So never know.
Yeah, it is possible. It's possible. It just doesn't seem totally possible for this Angels team that has gone through a handful of managers now. It's not saying like they had the same manager like the Diamondbacks did, where they kept Torey Lovello through the entire rebuild. Instead they're firing managers after manager. I mean, earlier this year they had Joe Madden as their manager, and then they fired him. Whole problems going on over there in Los Angeles. Yeah.
And I don't think like the expectations are too high for Ron Washington. I mean, don't get me wrong, like it's great to see him have a manager, opportunity again, because he, as you mentioned, Anthony, he's been around for as long as anyone can remember. But he's had success as being a manager with Texas, obviously. But yeah, I don't think the expectations are too high for this guy. I do agree with like how the Angels should have, in my opinion, gone with maybe a little bit of a younger manager with, I would say, a little bit of experience. But again, you got this Angels team that's completely rebuilding. There's chances of obviously losing Ohtani and possibly even trading Trout at some point, either this offseason or maybe during the regular season. But I think someone like possibly like a David Ross, someone that's a little bit younger, obviously has somewhat of experience, of course, managing. But I feel like the Angels are in desperation mode, and I guess their route was going with someone that has had plenty of experience and maybe try to turn things around in a 1-year span. But that just doesn't seem unlikely, in my opinion.
What I hope it doesn't turn into is another Joe Madden type situation. If you guys even remember the Joe Madden Angels tenure, was very forgettable. But it's very eerily similar, getting the veteran manager that had success. Obviously, Joe won a World Series and everything. But, they tried to kind of go with a little bit of a quirkier hire and say, look, we're going to get a veteran manager in here. We're a real baseball organization. We're changing things. And obviously it didn't work. I feel like this is kind of another attempt at that. The Angels have been laughed at. Obviously, the way they handled Ohtani and the way they've handled Trout for upwards of 10 years now. But yeah, I hope it goes well for Ron Washington. He seems like a very good guy, but I don't know. I really just don't see it ending very well. I think honestly he's either fired or he either steps down within 2-3 years.
I could see that too. And a little bit smaller of news. I mean, Astros promote Joe Espada to the manager spot. He was the bench coach for Dusty Baker, and he said, I never thought I'd be working with some Hall of Fame talent. So he has some Hall of Fame talent in front of him, or formerly in front of him. And I think the Astros team is just, they'll be monsters for as long as we can remember, for sure. I mean, they've been monsters since 2017, even with the scandal. I mean, this, as much as I would like to say that he's going to have a big effect on this team, I don't think it really will matter as much.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Spot has been one of those guys. I mean, Justin could attest to it. He's always in the running for manager. I mean, every time the Mets I know have had an opening, Joe Spot is interviewing Joe Spot. It's been for years now, but he's finally getting the shot. And I think this is honestly a perfect situation for a rookie manager, as you kind of alluded to, Vincent. This isn't a team where you really have to do a ton as a manager. You kind of have a really good team. And yeah, some of those guys are getting older and everything, but they're still going to be contenders for at least the next 2-3 seasons. So another guy I'm happy for. He's been waiting, and we're seeing a lot of first time managers, or at least managers that haven't been in it for a little while, kind of like around Washington. So interesting, very interesting. The veteran and Bruce Bochy won it all this season, but we also saw a lot of younger managers in the playoffs this season too. So I think you're kind of getting that mix of, yeah, we want to go for the veterans, and also that mix of, let's screw it, let's try a younger guy that could work well with the front office, that's going to listen to what the president of baseball ops wants to do. So baseball is always evolving and trying new things, and it's interesting to see.
Yeah, I like this move by the Astros as well, because of course Espada has not had any managerial experience, but he's getting elevated to a spot where the team is already contending, it's already built for him. So I feel like this year is kind of like a way of him to kind of get used to how a manager runs his team. But like at the same time, that the Astros are going to be good this upcoming year. I mean, I don't think anyone can say otherwise, but I think there's not that much pressure on Espada this year. And I think he's going to do a great job with this Astros team. Again, I think it's going to be a learning process the first year and just seeing how things go. But, I can see Espada being the manager for years to come, just given that this team is already going to do well for him without him having to do too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I imagine that everyone is very excited about all these manager moves, but everyone would more like to hear about the free agents. The free agents, the actual players, are what really makes the team. So the manager can do as all he wants, but I mean, if you put Joe Torre on the A's right now, he's probably not going to win some World Series as much as he could try. So let's look at some free agents right now. We're going to play a little bit of a game. So we have our 3 tier lists right here. I have them in front of me. Actually, so really quickly, MLB.com ranked some tier lists for some players. I'm going to give both of you guys a free agent from each tier. We're going to skip Ohtani for now. He's the top. So we'll talk about him later. But I'm going to give you each a guy from one of the tier lists. We'll start with tier 2 and we'll work our way down to tier 4. Okay?
Sounds good.
And you guys tell me where you think he's going to go and for how long.
Fair. Okay.
All right. So I want to start with tier list number 2. Justin, I'm going to start with you. Where do you think Jordan Montgomery goes? He had a great World Series. There's a lot of places he could be going. But some people really do need pitching, and he's a prime subject for that.
I haven't really had too much thought about Montgomery. Of course, he is one of the top free agent pitchers on the market for sure. But if I had to pick a team that has a chance at going after him, I could say the New York Yankees. I think the Yankees could really use another solid pitcher behind Garrett Cole and Nestor Cortez and all those guys, because you look at the bottom of the rotation, of course, Domingo Germán has had his issues off the field as well. And just the bottom 4 or 5 pitchers in that rotation just did not produce, um, as everyone expected for the Yankees. But I could see Montgomery sliding in to the Yankees in like that 3 spot, because I think you got what, Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon, in front. But I could see Montgomery slide into that 3 hole and be a productive pitcher for that Yankees team. And as far as the length of the contract, I wouldn't say it's going to be a huge contract if he does hypothetically go to the Yankees. I would say maybe a 2 or 3 year deal. But as far as the money is concerned, I don't really have a fair estimate there, because nowadays these contracts are ridiculous as it is. So you can see him make. I'm just gonna throw it out there. Like, let's say he makes $100 million, or then he can make $30 million. Like, you don't know how the contract is gonna go, because different teams have different ways of approaching it. But I could see him go to the Yankees.
Yeah, the 31-year-old, the Yankees is definitely not a bad pick. The only thing that's in question for the Yankees is how their front office wants to go. Are they going to go into a rebuild mode, which I guarantee they will not? But are they going to spend money? That question is up to Brian Cashman, and he has. I mean, we're talking about managers right now. The front office of the New York Yankees is on fire, and I don't think Brian Cashman sees any of it as happening whatsoever. But I would like to see a little reunion with Montgomery. That would be a fun one for sure.
Do you think he fares
Now,
better in his reunion?
no. I
Probably
think
not as much.
some people just can't deal with the light. It's okay. I hate the idea that people can't stand the lights of New York, because he does. I mean, you play in the World Series, as much as, as bright as the Yankees lights are, you can't say that they're brighter than the World Series, even for a team like Texas. You have to imagine there's something behind the scenes in New York that's going on. We'll have to see. Now, Anthony, for your tier 2 guy, I was deciding on which one to go with, because I was interested on your take, but I'm going to go with a little bit of a curveball here.
Okay.
Matt Chapman, the third baseman. He's 30 years old. He had a little bit of a hit in the offensive category this year. He had 17 home runs with 54 RBIs, which were our career lows.
I'm gonna go with your Phillies. I think the Phillies might swipe in,
Wow.
because I think, while Alec Boehm's fine, he's a fine player. He's had his woes at third base. If I'm the Phillies, I really want him. I imagine adding that to that lineup. I mean, wow, you have Harper and Matt Chapman is a pretty good combination there for your corner infield. Obviously, Harper's gonna, you would think, be a first baseman now for the Phillies. So I think that'd be pretty interesting. I guess I'll go with the Phillies. I hope it doesn't happen, just me personally as a Mets fan. But I think it makes sense for them. It really just comes down to the Phillies, if they're willing to shell out the money, because it fits. If it's right into your lineup, if it's right into your infield, will the Phillies give the money? Do you think that's a possibility or not?
I think the Phillies would need to make a big change to their lineup before getting Matt Chapman. There was rumors that Castellanos might be traded this year, and then they took those away. So I don't know, but I'll be honest with you. This is a little off the script right now, but I would not be surprised if Schwarber or Nick Castellanos are traded by the end of the offseason, so they can bring in someone with more defense. Because as much as Philly loves Schwarber and Castellanos, sometimes in big situations they just can't perform, and that's just not how it's going to work. But I like the take. I like it a lot. I do like it, and I think I don't know if Philly will get him, but we'll have to see for sure. Okay, now moving into the tier 3 list. Justin, we're gonna go back to you. I'm gonna going a little bit off Anthony here. I'm gonna give you the 31-year-old first baseman who didn't play this season, but is now a free agent and is almost most likely that he is not going home to Philly. Rhys Hoskins. Where do you think he's going?
Oh man, I gotta really just pull up quickly just some of the teams like just to look at that really could use a first baseman. So just give me 1 second to pull up a couple of the teams here. But
Well, while you're pulling them up, I will say that the Cubs have shown interest in him, and since they are potentially losing Cody Bellinger, it might be a good fit for them.
yeah, I'm just looking up this teams here really quickly. And I'm just because I gotta really see who could really use a first baseman. And yeah, you just said it too, Vin. Yeah, as well. But I don't really want to just go based off the reports here. I want to throw in maybe a little bit of a curveball here, but man, it's challenging. You're putting me on the spot here. I'm
Think on your
trying to
feet. You got to
find.
think on your feet.
I know, but I'm trying to think of teams that could really use a first baseman. I mean, the first thing that I'm looking at here right now is I could say the Miami Marlins as a possible team because they could use a first baseman right now too. Of course, their first baseman right now is Josh Bell, but I believe he is a free agent right now too. If he was on a 1 year contract, if I'm not mistaken, but that's a possible team that could use him. Of course, Miami has been searching for some big bats, and Rhys Hoskins is a guy that can give you 25 plus homers in a season as well. But yeah, it's just hard to like really pick out a team like that because in my heart, I feel like Rhys Hoskins does deserve another chance to go back to the Phillies. But of course, it's really unlikely. Of course, now that they've confirmed that Bryce Harper is going to be the first baseman of the future for the Phillies, so it would be really hard to bring him back and fit him into that lineup. But but yeah, I feel like the Marlins they could really use a first baseman like him as well. He's got exceptional defense, can hit for power, gets on base pretty often. Um, but yeah, it's just really unfortunate because I liked watching him with Philly as well. So I wanted to see him possibly come back to that franchise, but it just seems very unlikely for them to bring him back.
Yeah, it's definitely hard for them now, especially since they kind of doubled down and said that Harper is going to be their full-time first baseman now. But the Marlins, it could be a very good pick. I personally think he's going to go to the Cubs. Either the Cubs or the Reds. If the Reds really want to make a big push, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes over there and works with De La Cruz for a couple of years. Kind of has like a Christian Walker kind of role on the Diamondbacks. Works with the younger talent to, potentially get them to a World Series, which he's been to before now. So he could say that he's been there. Anthony, my guy for you, he finished fourth in the NL Cy Young back in 2019 as a 23-year-old. But the last 2 seasons, he's been really bumpy. He gets traded from the Cardinals to the Orioles this season. He struggled a little bit with them. They actually put him in a reliever type role for a little bit. I want to know what you're thinking with the right-handed pitcher, the 28-year-old Jack Flaherty. It's tough for sure.
Interesting. Jack Flaherty. Maybe the Braves take a shot. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm trying to think of teams that will spend the money and need the pitching. I feel like it's kind of a cop out for me to say the Mets, and I'm not going to say the Mets because I think the Mets are more on Yamamoto, and that's going to be a lot of money. I'll say, yeah, I'm going to say the Braves. I think the Braves will be in on him. I think the Braves are going to be in on a lot of people this offseason. I think this season, these past couple seasons, have left really bad tastes in their mouth, and the rotation is easily a spot that they could really improve on, mainly the back end of it. And I think it would be a really good spot for him to kind of, I don't want to say rejuvenate his career because he's been okay, but maybe just turn into that guy that could be consistently part of a rotation, finishes with a 2.9 ERA, something like that, and helps maybe a World Series effort. I'm going to go Braves. I'll lock in on Braves.
I like that one. I like that pick. The Braves are also in on Aaron Nola and Sonny Gray. I don't think Nola would go to the Braves. But if Sonny Gray does, they would definitely, I would imagine they would still like some youth over there. Jack Flaherty seems the perfect pick for them. So I like that one. So we're going to go in.
I just want to say something really quick on the topic of Ohtani, as we were just talking about really quickly for a couple of seconds there. But there was a report that just came out a couple hours ago from John Morrissey saying that Otani is very intrigued by possibly playing for the Braves. So
I don't buy that.
yeah,
I'm sorry. I could, because I don't think that the Braves will shell out the money for it. Number one, and number two, I think if he's going to go to an East Coast team, he's going to go to the team that you know what I mean. Like not stay on the West Coast. He's not going to want to go to a team that's not going to shell out 350, $400 million, which I can't see the Braves doing.
and I don't
I
see them
think it would be
having
the Mets if he's going to go there.
I don't see them having the money for him anyways. They'd have to trade a million
Right.
people to make up the cap space to even go after a guy like him. So
I can't see if
But
it does
I
happen. I'll be
want-
very upset, but I can't see that.
yeah, I just want to point that out.
Yeah, I have to agree with Anthony there. I don't think that might just be something that Morosi heard, and it's not his fault, but that just doesn't seem the Braves and him. I don't think the Braves have the money for him that he's looking for. I'll be honest with you. I think Otani goes to Seattle.
Seattle, wow,
That's an
didn't
interesting
expect you to
take.
say that.
I think Seattle has the money, and they have the money and they have the talent to keep him going for a couple of years. For sure. I think I don't think he's going to go to the Dodgers. I think that's not realistic. I don't think the East Coast is meant for him. I don't think he'll be in a pinstripes anytime soon. I think he will be in Seattle.
Interesting.
That's my pick.
I was gonna say the Dodgers.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I can see. I'm not gonna say it's anywhere near guaranteed. It's all up in the air. Right? When you deal with the numbers that he's gonna get, it's really all. I mean, you got a handful of teams that are willing, but it's
Mhm.
still up in the air. But I don't know. The Dodgers are just. They're another team like I mean, at least the Braves won a real championship, but they're another team that's been failing in the playoffs for years and years now, and I feel like they need to justify making that big splash. So yeah, I don't know. If I'm a Dodgers fan, I'm not. I'm very upset if they don't get him. Put it that way, because they spend money, and you got the West Coast going for you. It's been widely known that he doesn't want to leave there. So I don't know. I think if he doesn't go to the Dodgers, it's a big failure on the Dodgers' part.
Yeah. Justin, where do you think Otani's going to go?
No, I would have said the same thing. The Dodgers. I feel like he does like the West Coast a little bit. Of course he played in California with the Angels, and I don't think it's more of like a weather kind of thing that like Otani wants to maybe like change scenario like that. But Otani is the kind of person that wants to go to a contending team now. He feels that he deserves to play on a contending team. And, I just don't see a reason why the Dodgers wouldn't try to go after him and make that big splash that Anthony mentioned. Um, of course, they have failed a lot in the postseason, aside from, of course, the COVID year when they won. But, I feel like Dodgers fans want to see that big splash that they've been waiting for, after getting, of course, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. Why not add a big arm and a big bat like Otani? And and make a run for it. So I would have to agree with Anthony and pick the Dodgers as a big time destination that he could go to.
I could definitely agree. So we will keep you up to date on all free agent news. Nothing is set in stone yet. No free agents alone have been signed. So we're still waiting for the gates to open over there. But I assure you it is coming. And hopefully by next week we will have some kind of news. Maybe not the biggest news, but at least some kind of news. So now we're gonna quickly look into the finalists for Rookie of the Year. By next week, all of the awards will be chosen. But Rookie of the Year is tonight. So we're just gonna jump right into it. AL and NL, I feel like it's both kind of set in stone already who's gonna win. But I'll read them out and then I want to hear what you guys think. So for the AL, we have Tanner Beebe from the Guardians, Tristan Casas from the Red Sox, and Gunnar Henderson from the Orioles. This might be a little bit of a runaway one. I wouldn't be surprised, but all these players, I mean, Beebe had a really good season for the Guardians, even though they underperformed. He did a good job of holding that pitching staff together when Bieber was hurting or was struggling just in general. For the NL, Corbin Carroll, who we all know and all love already, James Outman, and Kodai Senga, who you guys know probably more than me. But Outman had a great start to the season. It looked like he was going to be the front runner, and he kind of fell off. Senga was consistent the entire season and looked like he was great. And Corbin Carroll was Corbin Carroll. I mean, I don't want to blame it on, or I don't want to pin it all on one person, but if there's no Corbin Carroll, I don't think these Diamondbacks get to the World Series. So for the AL, I think it's Gunnar Henderson, and for the NL, I think it's Corbin Carroll. But I'd really like to hear what you guys think.
I agree. I think pretty much it's not really. I'm gonna say it's not fair, but it's kind of a runaway. You know, you look at the stats for all these guys. Gunnar Henderson and Corbin Carroll's stats are way above any of the other finalists. So, yeah, I think they also got kind of lucky. I mean, there's good rookies in Major League Baseball right now. Don't get me wrong, but the talent pool wasn't like some years you see like there's like 5-6 guys that all of them could be, you know, you could feasibly say it could be Rookie of the Year. This season is kind of more so just like, look, these two guys had outstanding seasons. Guys with them have really good seasons too, but not outstanding. And there's a way bigger gap there than we've seen, I think, in a long time.
Yeah, of course. It's a 100% set in stone, and we're going to find out the confirmation in a little bit. But for sure, Gunnar Henderson and Corbin Carroll are going to be the rookie of the years for the AL and the NL for sure. I mean, as you mentioned, like if you do look at the stats, 28 homers for Gunnar Henderson, you know, batted just over 250 this season as well. Didn't get a whole lot of stolen bases, of course, but just the things that he was doing on the field were just spectacular. Like the plays he would make at short, you know, just the IQ and the awareness of a rookie like him was just unbelievable to watch. And you know, we've mentioned Corbin Carroll, I don't know, hundreds of times throughout the entire season. 54 stolen bases was the huge number that everyone would pay attention to as well. But you know, but just in general, he was just an extraordinary talent to watch this season as well. And you know, as you mentioned, Vin, without Corbin Carroll, this Diamondbacks team doesn't make it to the World Series, let alone even make the playoffs. So, you know, it was so fun to watch him this season. And you know, quickly, I just want to mention when we did our predictions before the season even started, I did have both Gunnar Henderson and Corbin Carroll winning Rookies of the Year. So I'm hoping that that stands true, but we'll find out very shortly.
Checking the receipts. That's Justin. There we go.
I will pull up the receipts right now. I have it.
Out of curiosity, who did me and Justin have, if you know? Because I don't really remember.
I don't know. Oh no, wait, hold on. I gotta.
Well, I had Jordan Walker and Anthony Volpe, so I am.
I think I had Volpe in the AL too. So I'm not good.
I don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up.
I don't think so.
You could just say it.
Well, yeah. Well, I had Corbin Carroll and Gunnar Henderson. I didn't have your guys' predictions.
Yeah, because we all wrote them down on our own. But yeah, my prediction went straight to the dirt. I had Anthony Volpe and Jordan Walker. Jordan Walker got sent down in the middle of the season and then got brought back up. And Anthony Volpe might have won a Gold Glove, but that does not mean that he's going to win Rookie of the Year in any rate.
I have mine here. I found it. I had Miguel Vargas and Anthony Volpe.
Oh man.
And I had Justin Verlander winning the Cy Young in the National League. Oh boy, poor Anthony.
The Cy Young was a rough one.
Do you guys remember my MVP that I had for the NL? I'm sure Vin remembers.
You said Trey Turner. Yeah.
I chose Trey Turner.
I didn't think he was going to have a good first season, and I don't think, in Trey Turner fashion, I don't think he batted 266 with us. So, not Trey Turner for sure. But I mean, we'll obviously get to all of our predictions next week when all the awards are announced. Because I mean, looking back, some of these were wild. I think I said Dylan Cease for AL Cy Young, which is wild. And now he's on the trade market. But yeah. So we are sadly coming to the end of our episode here on the Walkoff. I mean, it is always nice to have you guys on here, and it's always great to, talk about baseball every Monday. But on to the next week. And as we said earlier, next week, hopefully we will have some more free agent news, more fun free agent news. But at least we'll definitely have MVPs and all of that to talk about for sure. But thank you guys once again for listening to the Walkoff, and we'll be back next week for sure.